we can say that we are actually close to bringing the size of the cattle to the ceasefire. We are now in the ceasefire hours. If there is no attack, there will be a ceasefire. Now we will talk about all the details. We will talk about what happened, what is expected. We will talk about how the markets are in the economy. We will talk about what is being discussed in Ankara. Murat Özel is with us in the studio. Ada Tuğrul is with us. He will join us again and will share the latest developments with us. Nezlihan Khan is also waiting for us in Ankara. Good morning, everyone. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. Ada, hello. Yesterday, we were talking about the American attack on Iran. Today, we are talking about the ceasefire. In other words, we are talking about the developments and details that are happening in minutes. There have been many developments between these two. First, Iran, which said it would respond to the American attack on its nuclear facilities, launched a wipe attack and attacked America in Qatar. Then, hours later, Trump announced a ceasefire. Then, despite the ceasefire, the attacks continued for a while, but we are not seeing an attack at the moment. What happened from yesterday to today?
Yes, Elif Ozgul. When it comes to U.S. President Donald Trump, we were talking about the fact that everything could be uncertain, that everything could go wrong. Indeed, it was. And U.S. President Donald Trump made a statement on social media after midnight last night that surprised everyone, announced that a ceasefire had been reached. Of course, the first statements coming from Iran were actually more contradictory, more doubtful as to whether this ceasefire had actually been reached. However, as of 7 a.m. Turkish time, Iranian state television announced that the ceasefire was in effect. Israeli army radio likewise announced that a ceasefire was in place. And shortly afterwards, U.S. President Donald Trump posted again on social media. He said that the ceasefire is in effect, do not violate it. He underlined this once again in capital letters. Now, as you just reminded us, we actually had a completely different agenda yesterday. While the clashes between Iran and Israel were going on, yesterday Iran made that expected retaliation, and it targeted the United States military base in Qatar, Al Udeidi, which is the largest military base of the United States in the Middle East. But the information that we learned immediately after the attack was that, first of all, no U.S. personnel were killed. No one was killed in the attack. The military base had already been evacuated in advance because there were expectations that Iran would carry out such an attack. So we are not talking about any major damage. In other words, the scenario that we talked about and expected over the weekend has come true. We always reminded that after the American assassination of Iran's top Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani in 2020, Iran was again attacked by America. So it targeted their bases in the Middle East. However, just as we saw yesterday, there was an attack with a narrow impact. The real purpose here is actually, let's say that, and we have already learned this afterwards, Iran informed the United States about this attack before it happened. Qatar played the role of mediator here and made an effort to minimize the damage. So, in fact, Iran has to respond to this retaliation, as we have always said. Why? Because there is an expectation among the people in the country to respond to these attacks. Therefore, since he could not disappoint that expectation, he was expected to give this response anyway, and that is exactly what happened. Of course, now U.S. President Donald Trump said the following in his statement yesterday. It's a great day for America, a great day for the Middle East. I'm very happy that we were able to finish the job. And Trump also emphasized that this war could have plunged the Middle East into a kind of chaos that would not end for years. But it didn't, he said, and he even gave it a name. He called it the 12-Day War. So we can say that this is how it will go down in history. And of course, the question was, is the ceasefire that is in place, is it a ceasefire that will last for a certain period of time? But Trump said, no, this is a permanent ceasefire. I don't think Iran and Israel will attack each other after this. And Trump, of course, it's worth underlining this, that Iran's attacks on 3 nuclear facilities over the weekend paved the way for this ceasefire. He believes that. So once again, we understand that Donald Trump sees war as part of diplomacy, because Trump, in his post last night, said that in Iran, Natanz, he also thanked the pilots who flew those B-2 bombers that we talked so much about in the attacks on Isfahan and Ford's nuclear facilities. And he said that without them, this ceasefire would not have been achieved. It was important in that sense. Of course, let me tell you what happened until the ceasefire came into effect in the morning, because Iran continued its attacks from one side. And until 7 a.m. Turkey time, it carried out 6 waves of oven attacks, one after the other. The Israeli military has announced that it believes a total of about 10 to 15 ballistic devices were used. And while these attacks were taking place, there was also expectation and suspicion in the media. I wonder if the ceasefire will not come into effect, as Trump said. But as far as we understand, these mutual attacks have now completely stopped. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas, and the Arabist, was always emphasizing this. Israel was the first to launch the attack. Therefore, we are exercising our right of self-defense. And if the attacks stop, we will stop attacking. So in this very framework, everything actually came to pass. So how did the road to the ceasefire open? Let me talk a little bit about that, because there are some details obtained by the U.S. press. According to those details, the attack was launched yesterday by Iran. After targeting the United States base in Qatar, he sends a message to the United States. And in that message, he says, "This was the last retaliation and nothing more will happen." In response, the United States sends a message through diplomatic channels that it will not retaliate and that it is ready for negotiations. And in the meantime, yesterday, there was a phone call between U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In that call, Trump explained the latest situation to Netanyahu about the ceasefire. When Netanyahu accepted the ceasefire option, Qatar is again acting as a mediator here. And when this message was conveyed to Iran through Qatar, we actually learned that a ceasefire was agreed upon. Of course, when I looked at the American press this morning with my New York Times newspaper, Elif, I saw this. The American press is questioning this. Who was the winner in this? I mean, who was the winner of these 12-day wars that Trump also said? Now there are actually 3 actors involved. All 3 actors say that they are the winners. Donald Trump claims this: "I hit Iran's nuclear facilities and set Iran's nuclear program back for years, so I have achieved a great success." But let us underline this. The situation in Iran, the striking of nuclear facilities, is not evidence that these facilities have been completely disabled. We still don't have any clear data on this, because we also talked about this. Iran may have already taken the enriched uranium out of the facilities and hid it somewhere else. We don't know that. We don't have any clear data on whether the U.S. has really dealt a complete blow to Iran's nuclear activities, as it says. But Trump is using this kind of victory rhetoric. Secondly, let's see what kind of victory rhetoric Netanyahu is using. Netanyahu has been portraying Iran as such from the very beginning, the head of the octopus, the head of the snake. So Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen. Hence the one he sees as the head of all this. These attacks dealt a heavy blow to both the nuclear and missile capabilities of Iran, which it sees as its biggest enemy in the region, and neutralized it. And of course, Netanyahu is using this kind of victory. And Iran, by using the rhetoric that I made a great military power like the United States to back down, in fact, it also ended up doing this: a victory. Therefore, we can say that this is how it was reflected in the American press.